So on the next one, we can see that the columns go 3, 4, 5, 6. So term number 1 is 3, term number 2 is 4, 5, and 6. And we can see that the differences are +1, +1, etc. So the building blocks are ones. And we can also see that in here. So we've got this one is one more than the preceding one. This term is one more than the preceding one. This term is one more than the preceding one, etc. So if you fill in what that's going to look like, so we can see our building blocks as ones there. Rod 1 times 1, 1 times 2, a rod of 1 times 3, and a rod of 1 times 4. However, we've got an extra bit here. It's kind of built onto a base of 2 there. So we can see this base. If we go back to the table, if we go back to what we call term 0, that's the base that already existed before we started building the blocks in it. So if we go back 1 here, that'll give us 2. We can see that there was already a base in place, and that base was 2. And for me, that's the meaning of term 0. So we have a base of 2, and then we're going to build our building blocks on top of that. And in this case, it is literally on top of that, as we'll see, not always literally on top. So we can work out all of these things by first of all looking at the differences, the common differences here, which are ones, which means we're building with blocks of 1. But we can also know that we can see these are higher than those. We could also, if we go to term 0, we can see that we have a starting block there before we even start the first term, where we add 1 on, and then 1 times 2 and 1 times 3. So that in this one here, the 10th term number 10 would have 1 block of 1 times 10, but it would also be built on a 2. So every value in this series here, in the actual series, is going to be 2 more than if we just had the blocks of 1 series building blocks on its own. And term 100 will be the 1 block 100 times plus the 2 that it's built upon, and term of any number will be 1n. I know normally we don't put the 1, but I am, because we're building ideas here, plus 2 on there. Now here we've got a series going 1, 3, 5, 7, so I've filled it in on our table here, trying to get a little bit more abstract now. And the first thing to notice is it goes up in 2s. What that means within the model here is that the differences were 2s. So we know it's building blocks of 2. So the first one will have 1, 2. The next one will have a block of 2 times 2. The next one will have a block of 2 times 3. But let's have a look at what happens when we get to term 0. So these are going up 2 this way, so we want to subtract 2 coming this way. So term 2 would be -1. So it would look like this, but it would also have a -1. Now the way I'm doing -1 is to put it below the axis here, so that stands for -1. As I said, there are no negative tiles around at the moment labelled like that, so number rods. And that's the structure that's going on. Now, at the moment, this doesn't look like this. And if your students are happy having worked with positive, negative, integer discs, or algebra tiles, they would know that if you put a -1 and a 2 together, 0 pair ideas as well, you'd end up with a 1. There's currently no app available where what I'd love to do is to put the -1, onto the 2 and show that become this, and the -1 onto the 4 and show that. But hopefully there's an understanding that if you add together the -1 to each of these, they'll reduce in value, so it will end up looking like this. I wait for somebody to build that app. So in this one here, term 10 would be a 2 block times 10 and then subtract 1, so it'd be 19. Term 100 would be a 2 block 100 times and minus 1, and Tn would be a 2 block n times but then minus 1, which would reduce it in value, which would make, if we were building it, we'd see all of those, each of these columns drop down 1 in value.